but I wondered whether it might be a good place to start. Just talk about that process of kind of getting that diagnosis and that kind of mindset that I had to enter into, Neil, in terms of the being resilient and resetting to a new reality, because it feels like that's what everybody's doing right now, is trying to reset in a new reality, and the uncertainty around that. Because when I got diagnosed, there were a couple of things that went through my mind. The first thing was that I didn't know how long I had left to live, but I knew that I wanted to make the most of that time. You know, I didn't know if I had 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, but I wanted to make the most of that time. And I therefore wanted to try and be as good as I could be, whatever it was that I chose to do. And obviously swimming was the thing that I threw myself into. And actually my father entered me into the disabled swimming nationals before I even had my leg amputated. We were that proactive. So if you can imagine that conversation, it was a little strange, with a guy saying, "Can I enter my son into the disabled nationals?" And they said, "Of course. What's his disability?" "Well, he doesn't have one yet." It was a bit weird, but it was my dad's way of being proactive on my behalf. The other thought that happened to me, and this plays into, I think, where a lot of people find themselves right now, is that I had a moment of realization where I suddenly thought to myself, what would I think if this was happening to somebody else? You know, what would I think if a friend of mine at school, bear in mind I was 17, had this diagnosis and was going to have their leg amputated? And I probably would have thought, "Oh, that's terrible. What's for tea?" And it sounds kind of flippant, but the reason I say that is that the reality of the world is outside of your own small circle. People don't really feel sorry for you. And, you know, because if you think, we all look around the world and we see a tsunami, we see a volcano, we see a terrorist attack, and we wince, and then we carry on with the rest of our lives. And I think I realized very early on that feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to help me. And there was going to be very few people feeling sorry for me, and it wasn't going to help me either. So the best course of action, I thought, was to just stop with all that and try and get on with the new reality.
No, so I really like what you're showing there, and it is really valuable to the time we're in now, because for me it talks about the importance of mindset, and in particular the importance of mindset with dealing with challenges. So things may happen which are beyond our control, and we can't stop that, but how we choose to deal with it is absolutely within our own gift. And that, I think, is really, really resonant to where we are today.
Absolutely. You can't choose the challenges that are dropped on you, but you can choose the behaviors you display when faced with those challenges.
So let's jump ahead. So last time we showed a clip from the Atlanta Games. So I'm not going to go show a clip of that again, but just by way of recap, and obviously some people won't have seen that, let me recap via a few slides. So this is apologies to Mark, because I know last time you said I'm just kind of making you relive it all again. So we're going to go back through that now.
Do you want me to talk through this then, Neil? Is that what you like?
I'll talk through this one, because then I'll let you explain the why. So this is kind of the journey. Mark set off the final leg 9 meters down, and this is the end of that. So 2 meters of the swimming pool, and it's in classic terms a dead heat. But actually, in reality, there was 1,200 separating, and Britain was in second. So just a tiny, fine margin. And we could see, apologies, Mark, but we could see what it meant to Mark when he saw the scoreboard. Now, the really pertinent thing was, obviously, we talked about last time, is you didn't realise what had gone wrong until you watched the clip back yourself, and you saw happy face, sad face, happy face, sad face across the team members, and realised actually not everyone was desperate for gold. The others wanted a medal. And what I didn't then share last time on the clip, but we can kind of play back, is this is the pertinent piece. So this is the end of leg one, move transition to leg two.
Don't start calling somebody out, Neil.
Okay. It's just kind of we see we're level, and actually what happens is what one of the team who was more set for medal took a more risk-free approach, right? And that was
yeah. So yeah, let me yeah. So fundamentally, we didn't all agree on what success should look like, and for some people, they were happy with a piece of metal and a ribbon, regardless of the colour, and those guys were also a little bit scared of losing. And that was, they were driven by the fear of potentially losing rather than the desire to win. So they were happy with that. We got a medal. It didn't matter what the colour was. But because they had that mindset and we hadn't agreed on what success looked like, it meant that they started making decisions and choices which made it increasingly unlikely we were ever going to win. And I took that upon myself as a failure, really, because I was what I would call the unofficial leader, really, of this team. And when I say that, and we all know these people, you know them in organisations, an unofficial leader is somebody who doesn't have the fancy business card or the fancy business title to say that they're the leader, but they have influence. And I was that person who had influence, and typically it's because they either like talking or they're technically good at what they do or they've been around a long while. In my case, it was all three of those things. I like talking, fastest swimmer, been around a long while, but I didn't really get agreement with people, and I tended to still talk at people and tell people that I thought we could win the gold medal, rather than trying to get into some dialogue about what people's hopes and fears were. So when I reviewed that race and looked at what I thought was a failure and two other people thought was success, the fundamental challenge that I realized we hadn't overcome was my poor leadership skills, and my inability to communicate. You know, I thought communication was a one-way process that came out the end of my finger. I didn't realize I needed to listen to what people were saying to me, and I didn't even give them a chance to talk to me some of the time. And there's a Greek philosopher who once said, you have two of these and one of these, use them in that proportion. And that absolutely wasn't me. And that was the biggest failing for that team, was my poor leadership style, I think.
You talk in your speeches about being leader by default, but I kind of think, or sorry, manager by default. I think managers get a bit of a bad rep because you have all these. If you go and Google, managers versus leaders, it tells you, managers are bad, leaders are good, and that's what everyone should aspire to. But managers invariably, we take a good employee, and suddenly we decide to make them a manager. Or in your case, it was the fact you were the fastest, who taught the most and longest standing. And then we tend not to give them much, or if any, in the way of training or support, put them into that position. And actually what we do know about them is they're really good at what they're doing. And now we're expecting them to start delegating and sharing and leading. And that's difficult, right? And in reality, a good manager is also a good leader. And a good leader would naturally be a good manager. A manager is just a hierarchical piece. A leader, so they're in because someone's put them in the position. A leader actually is a voluntary decision by others to follow. So it's a different piece, and you can be a leader in any group, whether you're hierarchical and got the stripes in your arm or not. Yeah.
I would say that everybody has some form of leadership role, no matter what it is that you do. People look to you. People can see where you cast your shadow, and you've got to be aware where your shadow is cast. In terms of management, it's much more to do with process, and but I would say everybody's a leader, and some people are managers. But yes, you're right. There's too many comparisons between you're either one or the other. I think we're all a blend.
So if we bring it back to Atlanta, and you've talked about your leadership style didn't bring the team with you in that case. Let's move that forward then to Sydney 4 years later. And some of the questions we had last time were asking you, so was it the people who changed, or was it your kind of approach and your behaviours? And you said, well, it was a bit of both, but the main thing was the culture. So I guess the question is, what is it you learned from the first time out in Atlanta which didn't work, and what were the changes you made to make that then successful?
Yeah, so absolutely there was some change in personnel, but the cultural piece, I think, was the most important element. And the main part of that was really how I managed what my kind of dominant style, really. And I was much more inclusive, much more collaborative. You'd think you would be in a team, but we called ourselves a team, but we didn't really behave like a team. And if things started going wrong for one person, they went wrong for everybody. And I spent much more time talking to all the other guys about, you know, what were their hopes, what were their fears, you know, how were we going to work together? Can we agree on what success looks like? And having much more in-depth conversations that were two-way rather than one-directional from me as the inverted commas leader. And it just meant that we were far more open with each other and able to discuss some of the things that might have been perceived as a weakness in the previous setup that we had. If you talked about, well, actually, I'm worried about losing, I'm worried about going home without a medal, you know, that show of weakness in sport is frowned on by some. And actually, we needed to have that conversation to understand about, you know, what was our, to use a business phrase, what is our risk appetite? You know, how close are we willing to push it to try to get that gold medal, but potentially end up with nothing if you do a, you know, if your takeover is too swift. So it's a much, that was the key learning, was the two-way dialogues and my ability to listen to that.
So black curtains is one of the things I remember from your talk. Do you want to explain what that means?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So to expand on that idea of us getting to know each other better, I'll share a story of a particular guy on our team, a guy called Matt Walker. And Matt's got mild cerebral palsy, means that he tremors all the time, exhausting lifestyle for Matt. He's a category 7 swimmer. And for those of you that haven't seen Paralympic sport, there's categories, but in the relay, you can blend those categories. We have a 34-point relay. So this particular year, we had 2 10s, 2 7s making up the 34 points. And Matt was, I said to Matt, is there anything you're worried about? Is there a fear you could perhaps remove? And he said, well, there is actually. I'm a bit worried about doing the relay changeover. I said, well, why is that, Matt? You know, you have to dive in at some point, you know, and he said, it's not that. He said, I get onto the block and I'm trying to control my tremor. At the same time, I'm trying to anticipate the person coming towards me, and I find it a difficult thing to do. So we talked this through, and he said, well, we should make you go first, and you'll be more relaxed, you'll be happy, you'll swim quicker. So we did this at the European Championships, and almost immediately afterwards, Matt said, I actually don't like going first either. And I said, well, you know, Matt, there aren't many more choices. You know, what's the problem with going first? And he said, well, the thing is, I can see everybody, and it puts me off, and I'm getting distracted by these faster guys swimming away from me. And I said, look, you've got to block out the things you can't control. A bit like the situation we're in now in society. There are certain things we can control, and there's a heck of a lot we can't control. And it's understanding which is which. And I said, Matt, the people that you're racing against are going to go just as quick, regardless of whether you'll watch them or not. What you need to do is get your head down and do your job as well as you possibly can, and ignore all that stuff you have no influence over. I said, why don't you imagine there are black curtains either side of your lane, so that when you breathe, that's all you can see, and you're not engaging in that stuff you have no control over. So this became a bit of a mantra for Matt, to think about the black curtains, so much so that in the interview after the race in Sydney, he did mention it, and I'm sure there was probably only a handful of people in the whole world who knew what he was talking about, but it meant something to us.
So I love that, because it shows listening, which we talk about as one of the most important things of leadership, and also into the control of uncontrollables. But you said, obviously, not everyone's seen a race, so I wanted to cut to a clip and actually show everyone the end of that, so they could see that now as well. So this is
very good.
Last 3 minutes for everyone. Where we're going to start this is just before the end of the last leg, and you can actually see here the amount of leads. So the towards the right of the screen, that is Canada. And in second place is GB towards the left of the screen. So that's probably about 15 meters behind coming to that point. So I'll let you watch.
Can I do some colour commentary over the top of it?
Of course you can.
Yeah, okay.
Significant margin, and it's going to mean a lot of work for Jodie Cundy, the gold medalist in the 100 metres fly for Great Britain.
So yeah, we were a long way behind, but we're also aware that the final guy going for Canada was their athlete with the most severe disability. So I mentioned you have different categories, and we knew that the guy going for Canada was a category 6 swimmer, was going to end up swimming backstroke. That's why he was a category 6 swimmer. It's one of those nuances about Paralympic sport that some of the races are hard to read, almost more exciting because of it. So we were a long way behind it. And the interesting thing about this race was, if we'd have all done the times that we'd done in our individual races that week, we would have got beaten by Australia. They were the big threat for us. So at this moment in time, Canada just in the lead, then Great Britain, then Australia. And even at this moment in time, I'm expecting Australia to come past us, because on paper, they had the faster swimmers.
But it's Great Britain won, and it's Australia in there in second place in silver medal position. I think Canadians are being swamped out by the Brazilians, but it's going to be gold for Great Britain. And what a remarkable relay. Gold for Great Britain, silver for Australia, and bronze for Brazil. They've come through on Canada, and Canada get nothing. What a magnificent performance by the British quartet. Matt Walker, and I'm so pleased for Marc Woods, Dave Roberts and Jodie Cundy, and they came through the margin of advantage, a couple of meters at the end, but it's gold, and that was magnificent. Well, there's the evidence, 4:06.85, and the world record has gone. Australia with silver, and Brazil with bronze.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's all mine, Mum. Oh, I just so wanted to do it for Dad and for you and everybody else.
Matt, well done to you and all the guys. That gold medal must be so special.
Oh, I'm over the moon. It's much better than my best I was. I mean, I've got one of the hardest jobs swimming against 2 S10s. But I just said, think of the black curtains. And it worked out fine. And I passed over to this guy and he did the business.
Well, Mark, 58.66 on the clock there.
That's brilliant. I mean, I'm so proud to be part of the British team and part of this team, the swimming team. And most of all, my dad died the week that I was meant to come out here, and I'm proud to have been his son, and I'm done it for him. He had a good seat tonight, I think.
Absolutely. And David, another gold medal.
Awesome. What a team. I mean, we did it. We said we were going to do it, and everything came through on the night. It's a big swim by the last man. Everyone was just awesome team.
It was a big swim, Jodie, and the crowd were just magnificent.
And especially because we beat the Aussies, it's just the best bit of it. It's like on the home soil and take the relay from in a world record by 4 seconds. Unbelievable.
So
yes, so you got an insight there into the black curtains, and apologies to anybody who happens to be on this webinar from Australia. But I've got a medal here. I don't know whether you can see that very clearly.
Yeah, that's good.
I wonder, I probably can zoom in with my fancy camera. Hang on, let me see if I can do that.
There we go.
Oh, is it gonna? There we go. So some people say to me, that looks like a silver medal, and I would say to them, well, actually, they don't make solid gold medals anymore. They make solid silver medals, and they plate them with gold. And because previously at events, I would let people like yourselves have a little feel of this and a little stroke of it. Everybody goes home with a piece of gold on their hand, and I go home with a silver medal. But now that we're all working remotely, I maybe can keep what little amount of gold that I have on this for a bit longer.
Oh, so thank you for that. And I think it's a really, one of the things I loved as well as you went through the team was the sense of spirit you had. And as the third guy along actually said, we said we were going to do it and we did it. And I think that's, for me, is almost one of the fundamental differences you probably had to the time before. The whole team was bought in that was the goal you were going for. And that
we had clarity. We had clarity on what we were trying to achieve.
And that's a beautiful segue to one of the questions we got last time is how do you plan with uncertainty, given everything that's going on? And I wanted to kind of share a bit of the approach we take at Head Business Consulting, and then come to your thoughts from a sporting arena on that. So we try and say, well, it's really difficult with uncertainty. So what you need to do is focus on what you know. So it's kind of taking it back to clarity. And there's a quote I wanted to share, which is, clarity and simplicity is the antidote to uncertainty and complexity. And that's an American general. So it's really that clarity point again. So it's our kind of stage. We focus on what you know, what we can control. We go back to basics. So that's kind of the simplicity piece he talks about. Think differently. And this is, don't be constrained by that's the way we do it around here, which I think is the classic example, again, of your black curtains. Everyone always sent the fastest guy out last and the second fastest guy first. So Matt going first when he was one of the slower ones, that was what was causing a problem. But don't allow yourself to be constrained by that. Run scenario planning to kind of think through the different pieces and then also make a decision. So it might not be the perfect decision, don't aim for that, but it allows the team to move forward with certainty and you'll be directionally correct and then you can tweak as you go. And we talked about Phyllis Wilder from NASA last time out. And for me, that then is very much all into the controllables and uncontrollables. And one of the things we use in some of our other teaching or training sessions is around Usain Bolt. So back in the sporting arena, that it's almost impossible in athletics or swimming you can't control everything. You can't control how fast anyone else might race. So Usain Bolt, who wanted to win his third gold medal, he and his coach sit down, they determine a time they think he needs to run, let's say sub 9.8 to win, and then they do everything they can to what he eats, when he trains, how he trains, what he wears, and all these things that they can control to optimize him and get in the best possible shape on the day to run that time. If someone turns up and runs 9.6, you can't do much about that, but it's about controlling what you can. So kind of back to yourself in the swimming world, where it's kind of similar approach. How did the kind of coaching go on and how's that work for when you were training?
So you're right in that you control what you can control, and you absolutely can't control the other athletes in a sport like mine. It's not like a team sport where there's an element of interaction. But the thing that you can control, and this is almost less important on competition day, but for the other 4 years, as you're getting ready for a competition, you can control how you deliver day in, day out. So I couldn't focus on winning a gold medal for 4 years. It's unsustainable. But I can focus on trying to achieve my potential day in, day out. And that will mean that I can focus on training as hard as I can, eating the right food, sleeping properly. All of those things are controllable. The graft element is controllable. It's up to me to choose to do that. And if you can do that day in, day out, over a week, a month, a year, a 4-year period, the end result is there's a better chance of the right outcome for you. And even if the outcome isn't right and it's not what you wanted, and something happens that is out of your control, like a Usain Bolt winning the medal, then you can hold your head up high and say, I did everything that I possibly could to try and achieve my potential. Perfect.
So at this stage, I thought we'd maybe introduce our other mystery guests we've got on as well. So as we did for Mark last time round, we wanted to introduce the person who will be our lead speaker next time, and then you'll have myself, Mark, and our next speaker, all for the Q&A after that. So our next special guest is Poonam Gupta OBE. So Poonam is a multi-award winning. She's currently the current EY Entrepreneur of the Year for Scotland. I actually had the honour of going to her offices earlier this year, and what struck me there is they've got so many awards that actually the mantelpiece wasn't big enough. So I was struck with the Jaws phrase of you're going to need a bigger boat. But if we can maybe turn to Poonam, have we got Poonam unmuted, Kirsty? Poonam, are you with us?
Yes. Can you guys see me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, we can hear you. So we'll hear. I mean, you've got a fascinating story, and we'll hear more about that last time. But one of the questions which came up, which I thought people would be particularly interested to hear about, is you're the chief exec of PG Paper. With the coronavirus and everything that's gone on, what are the particular challenges you faced with actually, from a leadership point of view, managing your business and your people, and what are the steps you've taken to try and manage those?
Oh, that's going to take me forever to answer, actually. That question is a long one. I think I'll talk, maybe can I focus on people here? So, the people who work for us, which coronavirus, obviously a pandemic with no cure, and with everything that kind of came through with the panic which came with it, was important. The first and foremost was to keep our people safe and to ensure that they felt still confident. How do we keep them safe, and how do we still keep them working in some capacity for the business, because it's important for them, for business to be sustainable. It was important. Our business requires people's participation. Our team is highly skilled, and so their safety, almost I can say, became the top priority while we were dealing with it. One of the things that we did was, thankfully, we were keeping an eye on it quite earlier on, is with the onset, in China in December. Working in various countries, I think we were keeping an eye on what the other countries were doing. It became quite evident kind of end of February that we would potentially go in a lockdown. So we did some drills, I would say, in the office where we tried and tested with people working from home. And then, when we went in the lockdown, thankfully, having invested in our system over last few years, it became possible almost to say that, okay, people could function from home during this lockdown, which they have been doing with literally 2 or 3 people who've been coming into the office on daily basis, people who particularly can practically walk to the office just to ensure that, the essential activities in the business can be met. The biggest challenge we faced was, how do you keep your people inspired? We are all born and brought up with the idea of, when we'll grow up, we'll have a job, or even if you're running a business, we'll go to the office. People like interacting with people. We are social animals. We like that interaction between teams, with our colleagues. And a lot of people are actually not comfortable working from home. Their productivity suffers. They might have anxiety, which we felt, kind of came through. It became evident that we had to actually focus, kind of had to pick up the key major issues and focus on how we were going to tackle it, and ensure that while we keep our people safe, we also had to keep them productive and motivated. And some of the things we kept in place very, very quickly were weekly Zoom meetings, meetings with their managers, ensuring how they were doing, how their families were doing, and keeping kind of an idea. The people who were not performing well in their home environment, you could see from their figures that, or we could see that their productivity was suffering. We kind of kept a very transparent approach where we encourage people to come and speak to us, and also realize that maybe some people were not comfortable telling us their issues. So we reached out to them to say, is there anything that we can support with, and how we can support? And then it kind of became evident that there were certain people who were thriving in this working from home environment. Perhaps they had previous experience of doing that. They felt they were being more productive, in fact, since they didn't have to travel to work, and they were saving a lot of time, not having to come to work, like the transportation time and everything else it takes. And they were feeling good that they could spend time with their family, and they had certain degree of flexibility with dealing with their work. But others kind of made it very clear that they were not being productive, and they felt their markets were in a shutdown. They were anxious whether they'll have their job or not. We encourage them to maybe, see if part-time would work for them, and if that wasn't an option, we simply said to them, maybe it's time that, you'd spend time with your family, take this time off work, take this as your annual leave right now. So when you're ready to come into work, then, you feel that, okay, you are ready, you're ready to give it your all. And I think we kind of dealt with it on case by case basis, and we gave our managers that right and power that they needed to reach out to their teams, to speak to them, and if there were issues that they were not able to handle, then bring it to the upper management. I think it's worked really well for us, because we have furloughed about 9 people, but with the team of around 55 people we have in the UK and around the world, I feel that our approach, this dynamic approach that we took, where we kind of focused on people, worked really well. We have that confidence of our employees. They know that, they will be coming back to work. They also know that, the company is providing a very strong exit strategy out of Corona to make sure that as and when they start coming into work, we have an environment they feel safe in. And that means we have created a very detailed plan, which we have presented to them, taken their question answers, and also, kind of if they had any questions which was bothering them, or any doubts, or they had any concerns which they aired, we ensured that we also take that into account into our exit plan. So I think, people kind of was a big one for us, and I think we've handled it quite well. That is at least the feedback that I have from my team, and that's what I'd like to share with you today.
I love that. I mean, what I picked out of that was communication, and actually you've increased the amount of communication because you understand that being out of the office loses some, so it's putting more in place. There's a real strong element of caring that came all the way through that, and I think that's one of the things we talked about in terms of the really important traits of leadership is that empathy and caring about your people. And then there was also an understanding that actually not everyone's the same. So some people you talked about actually thriving in this environment, the flexibility it gives them to work from home and maybe work at slightly different hours. They're there with their family at some times, they can work at different bits. Whereas other people actually struggle, the environment maybe was less conducive to that, and actually taking different approaches to try to respond to the individual needs as well. And I got a real kind of sense of a bit of a kind of almost family spirit about the way you treat your staff and treat the company. Is that a kind of fair description?
I think that's very fair. We in the UK, we have a small team of about 25 people, but we do have people down south as well who already were, you can say, working from home. And I think we do have a little bit experience of, looking after our people while they work from home. Our New York office, our person there works part-time from home, part-time from the office. And you're right, such a strong element of communication was important, and acknowledging that not everybody is going to be productive. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to judge them through these hard times, or we are going to take into account their past performance as well? And whether we just let them be anxious that, oh, if I'm not selling enough, my markets are in a lockdown, will I lose my job? I mean, that's not what I wanted. For me, people are always at the forefront of, my business activity. And I take great pride in saying that, I do want to look after my people. I have, working mothers who have young children, they have different needs. So I guess, this dynamic approach between understanding people, what they're worried about. And, I would say here that our managers are trained to such a point that they can actually recognize a lot of things before it gets escalated to the top management. And, our first approach always has been, not just through the pandemic, is to support our people and see if we can, by supporting them, get the best out of them. And most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, we've been successful in that. There is that odd case where we feel that, okay, we've done everything and we just can't turn this person around for any time or reason. Then we have to take a tough decision of letting them go. But thankfully, we've not had to do that during these times.
Oh, that's really good. So thank you for that. We'll come to, your story and background we'll come to next time when you're our lead speaker, because actually I love some of the challenges you've had to overcome, and I think that's a great story in its own right. So we'll maybe now move to Q&A for people. So there's a few questions out in chat already. So Mark, first of all, there's a question around, do you still get a buzz watching winning back in the even after all these years?
I think the buzz that I get when those videos are played is more to do with is the enjoyment that I see other people have from them. Much more to do with that. So a big live event, when you've got that playing on the big screen and you've got 300 people where you've shared your personal story, to see them enjoy it means more to me than watch the video. But then I have watched it an awful lot of times. So yeah, not quite the same as it was to do it live. Shall I pick up on one of the other questions here,
yes,
Neil?
please do, yeah.
So there was a question around about that inner voice and how you control that inner voice. Can be both positive and negative. If you're thinking to yourself, I don't have an inner voice, the voice that's telling you that you don't have an inner voice is your inner voice. So if the thing with the inner voice thing is that is to own it, and it can, for someone like me, because I think there's a mixture of people in this world. There are those people who are smart enough to overcome it easily. There are those people who are deaf enough just to ignore everything. And there's people like me in the middle who have a inner dialogue battle. What I found was, by doing the actions that I described earlier, by being unrelenting in my pursuit of achieving my potential, meant that I could tell the inner voice that was negative to shut up and go away, because I've done everything that I possibly can to try and be as good as I can be, and the outcome is almost irrelevant. So stop giving me this chat in my ear, this potential, oh, you're not good enough chat that we sometimes have, because I don't care. I've done all that I can to get to this point.
And that inner voice is a bit like Steve Peters' inner chimp, I guess, really, and what
Absolutely.
the cyclist team, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the natural default state that you tend to go to. I'll tend to question myself, whether I'm capable. Question my capability, and that's not healthy when you're trying to become the best in the world at something at one very particular moment in time.
So we've got last chance on the Menti. We're going to share the word cloud with you in a minute. So I've just put that in the piece for everyone to go in. Poonam, a question for you was around the staff. What, in terms of coming back to work, so what feedback have you had from the staff around what would make them feel safe to come back into the work environment? Are you with us there, Poonam? Might have lost it. Oh. So did you catch that question?
Yeah, coming back to work, I think coming back to work has been a slow process, for the people. Like, first it's like preparing them and telling them, like I said, we have prepared a very detailed exit strategy. We are not, we are kind of applying a common sense approach here, and also seeing what's happening in other countries. For example, we have a big enough size office in Greenock, at the waterfront, where we can accommodate 20 people. But there is a realization that, Corona is not going to go away anytime soon. So, we are not going to rush for our people to all of them to come into work. So our approach is the ones who've been struggling to work from home. We are looking at first giving them an opportunity to start coming into work, because they are actually quite keen to come into work. They already know that all the norms of social distancing and, the desk space and the toilets are secured. We are actually going to the point of making sure that nobody needs to open the door with hand or close the door with hand. Enough sanitization wipes are there, instructions on the board. I think everything's gone into literally, every detail in the plan. And I think the first people who are going to start coming to work are the ones who are kind of saying that, please, we want to come back to work because we're not able to work from home. And I think we'll function with possibly about 30% of our workforce ensuring that, they feel completely safe coming into the office, into the environment. And I think it's only going to be later on in the year where we're going to think about whether we will be ready to bring everybody back in, or some of them will work from home, I think, for even a couple of years actually going forward.
And that's actually quite a common theme amongst businesses now, looking at this flexibility. So as you say, it really does work for some. So a lot of the big banks that I've been chatting to, who have 15 offices nationwide, are now already taking the view that they're never going to go back to that. They want this flexible working, and particularly for those it works for. So this is part of the new normal we talk about, that the fact we can do things remotely has opened up the possibilities of these things, and the actual end state, once the coronavirus has passed, will be a blend of where we are today and where we were before. So it's not as locked down, but actually taking advantage of some of the good things as well. So I think it's great that you're looking into what does work and thinking about how things can improve and change. So some other questions. I saw one in there around psychologically and emotionally ready to work. So obviously last week was a mental health awareness week again, and Mark, it touches on what you talked about with your kind of the Steve Peters inner chimp piece, and we have both psychological effects in our brain, and we also have neurological effects. Obviously the inner chimp is just how our brain works, right? So we all have these things going on for us, and that will have an impact on us first. And this is our subconscious, which when I was a kid growing up, people talked about you only use 10% of your brain. Well, that's not true. You use all of it, but 10% is our conscious. The subconscious brain works at the speed of light compared to how we actually think. And it's our primeval urges, and this is the inner demons we get telling us things. And then our conscious brain is actually the higher power that has the ability to overrule, but it works more slowly, and it's how we convince ourselves for some of these things. And a lot of this safety and security is almost overcoming some of these neurological urges and instincts we have, and then psychologically trying to think around how we do that. And I guess that's kind of touching back onto the point, Mark, you talked about getting over some of these challenges and the doubts and self-doubts you suffer as an athlete. So if we try and apply that to people now coming back to work and feeling safe or not feeling safe, what sort of learnings can you take from your days as an athlete to kind of apply to that space?
Well, to be honest, if I were to think of anything, I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is nothing to do with swimming. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I would imagine that everybody knows what it is with the pyramid, and you've got to look at those those levels. We're working through those levels. Do we feel safe and secure? Are we able to then provide? And so that I think you could sit the process that we're all going through quite easily with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I would recommend anybody just look that up. They'll understand what I mean.
No, thank you. There's another question around empowering managers. So I shared last time, and I'll quickly flick it on screen for people again. So this is high performing teams and kind of the characteristics of high performing teams. And obviously the key environment that I guess Poonam was talking about was this mutually supportive environment they have at the middle. But if we think about empowering and the importance of that, there's a really simple way you can think about it. If it's good for the company and aligns to our vision, so that's it matches the purpose, and it is part of the roles and responsibilities and people prepared to take accountability for it, and it's good for the customer as well, then just do it and don't need to go through the hoops, and that then creates empowerment. And that then unlocks a lot of opportunity for people to get on and remove some of the processes we naturally put in place for things as well. So I thought that might, to Robin, your question on empowering. Okay, so moving in as we kind of, we're in this uncertain world at the moment of kind of coming out and not coming out, and we've got various bits of uncertainty going on. I guess screen's popping up. For people here, the question is, what do we do next, and how do we kind of try and focus our own teams and our bodies on it? And I think Poonam talked a really good point around different people at different stages. So again, it's understanding our people, and again, back to mental health. Some of our people are feeling more secure and happy to move on, some people less. And as a leader, it's our responsibility to try and think about each of these individuals and be personal to them and care and understand. And then think overall about the company and what is it we need to do for the company going forward. And as we talked about earlier in Mark's description about the black curtains, is not be held back by things we've done before, but what can we do differently? So I guess, Poonam, to your point, moving the company forward and you're starting to look at how you can develop things. You've got staff, you've got clients, you've got your own cash flow and everything else you're looking at. What are the main challenges for you that you're trying to overcome to enable you to get back to normal working, if you like, and normal productivity?
See, for normal working and productivity, the only thing that is in our control right now is us. The fact of the matter is multiple countries are in lockdown. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. There are no timelines for the governments. So I guess we need to work. We have decided that we are going to work with our timetable. And the only thing which we can control at the moment is ourselves. So our focus remains, for next 3 months, the plan is to keep the business stable, which is exactly what we've tried to do over last couple of months. We are accepting, we are not, trying to tell our team or, that, okay, it's going to get normal from June end or July onwards, even though in some markets we are hearing that perhaps things are going to come back to normal in July. We are kind of making our own assumptions based on whatever information is available out there. And I guess a lot of it, look at the governments, I guess they don't know what they're doing. So we don't know if we are going to get everything right. We cannot say, do we know that there isn't going to be a second and third lockdown? We talk about this peak and that we've peaked and we are coming back from it. Well, we don't know that, because then there's also talk about, we will peak again, and that could be more devastating than the first time. So like I said before, the focus remains that we have to keep our business stable. And we have postponed a few of our plans, which were growing the company. That's not the focus right now. That focus has been pushed way back in the year. Right now, the first angle still remains people. We need to make sure that our people are safe and are in perfect condition to work. Our people are highly skilled. We need them to work. Then the second point is we need to bring them to work slowly and gradually, but that's not going to happen. And they know that to full strength for a while. Some of them, like I said, the performers who do well working from home will remain there. The Zoom meetings kind of make that, isolation still feel like you are still together as a family and you have people to reach out to. There's no doubt that, work has increased. My own phone calls, I would say, have more than trebled. In a day, I struggle to find any time right now because I'm also having to speak to my teams beside, my usual work, what it used to be. But I think that would obviously cannot go on forever. There's a recognition there as well. So we are again looking at systems which can, minimize some of that extra workload that, if I am facing it, surely my people are facing it as well. And then, gradually come into work. When I say gradually come into work means that, gradually accept the new normal and, then think about, okay, we are going to go back on the growth path. But, there is right now an acceptance that we need to stabilize and then think about growing our company.
Yeah. Thank you, Poonam. And there's a comment come up around sort of communication challenges as we're trying to manage all these things, which we can maybe touch on that a little bit more next time. But obviously next time, particularly want to focus on some of your story and your background, because I think that's fascinating as well. What we're going to move to now is we're going to share the word cloud we created from what you guys have filled in on Mentimeter. So it should pop up. So this is the 60 of us on here where we come up, and so the big things which pop out: empathy, authentic, communication, inspirational, integrity are the kind of biggest ones which come out, with a lot of other words as well. So I think that's kind of really pertinent to both the setting of where we are today, but also actually leadership in the 21st century, in the 20s, and what we expect anyway. So thank you, Andrew, for sharing that. Any thoughts on that one particularly, Mark, in terms of the words we saw there?
Yeah, it's interesting to see those words. I think for me, the word that was missing there, but which probably would encapsulate many of the words, is inclusion. And if you look at the organisations that have done well or have managed the situation well that we're currently in, those that already had quite inclusive environments, who had an understanding that not everybody could work in the same way, that some people had childcare challenges or mobility challenges or whatever. Those leaders that were inclusive, that have created inclusive environments, have been more successful in dealing with this situation. And I think that conversation around inclusion within the workplace, whilst it's been very relevant in previous years, is going to come more and more to the fore over this next couple of years.
I was chatting with a colleague just yesterday on this, and it's a bit like the old Lee Trevino comment around when he got accused of being lucky and said, well, the more I practice, the luckier I get. So it's if you do the right things all the time, then actually when it comes to the crunch, you're better placed to actually respond well to it. And yes. So
that old quote really means that the more that I do, the more I practice, the less luck comes into it fundamentally.
Absolutely.
And that's
absolutely. Yeah. And it's the same for leaders, right? So if we do, it's not that suddenly a crisis has happened and now I need to exhibit all the right leadership behaviours because it's too late. It's actually if we do it all the time, when a crisis happens, actually we find we pull through more effectively because we're already in the right situation, we've got the right team in place. I think that's the real pertinent piece here for me. So we're coming to the close. Any final kind of comments from yourself, Mark?
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to do this. Feel free to connect with me. Anybody that's listened to this, and I think hang in there is what I would say. The days of networking, meaning that you get to have a nice glass of wine, have gone. But these networks, informal networks that we're creating, and thank you, Neil, for doing this, are important. And these human connections via this method is where we are. And we are going to have to be resilient ongoing. We're not at the beginning of the end. I feel as though perhaps we're at the end of the beginning, with the current situation, and resilience and using those networks and leaning and getting support from each other is going to be so important.
Well, thank you. And Poonam, any last words for yourself? So obviously we'll get to hear more from you next time.
I completely agree with what Mark said. You know, we are all planning. The only way forward is to stay resilient and plan forward on the basis that, you know, we have to live with this corona for at least quite some time. And, you know, instead of thinking about going back to normal, we should utilize technology to ensure that we get connected and we start getting used to the idea of new normal and how life is going to be, and start planning and executing, I think, that plan, rather than, there's no point of thinking about something that we don't have right now. We might as well move forward in a positive way.
I think be positive is a really good message actually for everyone to take. So and it goes back to the very beginning that Mark talks about. We can't control what happens to us. We can control how we deal with it. And therefore, for me, that's the real piece, is for all of us to take that away, to do the very best we can do out of this situation. So thank you all for your time. These will run fortnightly. So Poonam will be our lead guest speaker next time. And what we'll do each time is bring an extra person in. We've got a great line of speakers for you coming up over the next couple of months, from the worlds of sport, from ex-army people, and even Harvard Business School as well. So we've got some great names. I can't tell you who they are because that would spoil my mystery guest piece I keep playing. But it's well worth dialing into. So they'll all appear on the IAD website. We'll send you reminders through those who previously registered. But please do come in, register, and we'd love to see you at this session, and keep sharing with us. Thank you all for your time.